Let's give them a real good round of applause.
Thank you, Garrett. Don't be so impressed. I didn't come in last, but I did not win, and I didn't get hurt. That was the main thing. I ran the DC Marathon. I don't know if anyone's ever done it. It was actually the second time I ran it, because the first time I ran it, no one could believe I ran it. And people were like, "You ran a marathon?" And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "That means I can run a marathon." I mean, like, anyone, then I gotta do it again. I'm standing today, a lot of Advil. I am here from Washington, D.C. And it's, thank you, Coro, thank you, Garrett, thank you, Travis, thank you to the Coro board, the staff, the donors, the current participants, the alumni, everyone who cares so much about these organizations, the donors, of course. I am currently the CEO of a group called the National Summer Learning Association based in Washington, so I might be the only one here from DC, but I'm honored to be here. But I also am a very proud alum. I was a Coro Fellow 26 years ago, finishing 1999. And then I had the great honor of coming back onto staff. So I'm a very proud former Coro staff member, where I worked from 2001 to 2003 under the leadership of the amazing Phil Lee, who I know is here. Let's give Phil Lee a round of applause. And on behalf, again, of all these honorees, I want to thank you for not only recognizing us and all the honorees tonight, but thank you for giving me a great reason to leave and escape Washington, D.C. If I ever could think of a group who could use some leadership training, I think it's over there. And it's funny, also my wife, who unfortunately can't be here, I have little kids, and she's like, "You go do this thing." And she's like, "What are you doing in New York?" I'm like, "I'm not sure, but they're calling me like a luminary." And you can just imagine her rolling her eyes. And she's like, "Have they seen you do laundry and dishes? Like, I don't know what you're getting honored for." And then it made me think when I called my actual Coro fellow classmates, and they were like, "What?" And when you tell Coro people, because you're also deserving of recognition, every Coro person in a moment like this is thinking two questions. Why is this guy getting an award? And how come I'm not getting it? But let's be honest, it's a fair question, by the way, and if you're asking those questions, take it up with Garrett and leave me alone. But this is what I really want to say. I genuinely love Coro. It's had a huge influence and impact on my career, on my personal life. It's taught me so many skills, given me so many mentors and experiences and lessons that I've taken with me wherever I've gone. And really just three specifically around the importance of multi-sector partnerships, which we see reflected in this room, the importance and the immediate and lasting impact of experiential learning, which I think we know, I've learned the power there. And then a super critical, but sadly more and more rare skill around consensus building. So I got so much, and in fact, it's not really fair because Coro didn't get that much back from me in return. I did make one small but lasting contribution, which I do want to kind of share, which is, maybe some of you know the history of Coro. So Coro was started by two World War II veterans who came back in the 40s after watching the world almost be exploded by nuclear weapons, and they're like, the society has changed, the world's in a bad place, we have new problems we've never seen before, we need new leaders with new skills who can help solve them, with new thinking. That was the whole premise out in California. And they came up, they were really visionary, came up with all these amazing features of the program that never existed before, maybe today more commonplace, back then. There was no multi-sector rotation leadership training happening. It was a big deal that they came up with this. And then they got like a little carried away, and while these people, I'll give them credit for being, their names were Fletcher and Dodge, like very creative about the leadership program part, they weren't like marketing and branding geniuses. And they decided for this new leadership program, it needed a new name, a word that did not exist in the English language. A word that is not an acronym. A word that is not an abbreviation or a metaphor or the Spanish translation for choir. They decided and they landed on the word Coro. And so, as I tell you, we've all been left suffering the consequences ever since, because we've all had to explain what this thing is to everybody we meet, and no one knows. And so I find myself in 2001 on staff, and this is my small contribution, with Phil Lee at a whiteboard. And we're like, it almost was like a game of Wordle. We started putting words in different order. And we ended up and landed on Coro New York Leadership Center, which is somehow still being used today. Because if you didn't know anything about Coro, at least you knew this organization was focused on developing leaders who were going to serve New York City. And that's the name, and that's what you still do today. And we're so proud of that. Well, that's my one little thing. And now I gotta tell you real fast that I get asked, because I moved from New York, and I moved to Boston, I moved and worked in Los Angeles, and now I'm in DC, and I've stayed connected to the program and organization. So people ask me still, because I bring it up. And they're like, what does Coro mean? What does it stand for? And since I knew these founders kind of made up this word, I have now been empowered to also make up my definition of what I think. And so now I tell people to save some time. I go, all right, let me tell you what it stands for. The C stands for community. Okay? I've never been in a room, part of an organization with more hardworking, high-achieving, diverse community builders, bridge builders, people who care, wake up every day thinking about how can I solve problems and make other people's lives better. That's what this community is. It is amazing. I always, even when I was in Coro, I felt an honor not to just be in the program, but the honor of being with everyone else in the program. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was reminded of this. I was on a Zoom reunion call with my Coro class, and I got to reconnect with a Belgian who was in my class who was elected to the Oakland City Council in California, and a Coro board member out there. And then I caught up with Cassie Yanisek, who became an environmental expert and a partner at McKinsey. And then we were there on this call to support our classmate, Hannah Pingree, who's now one of the front runners running for governor of Maine. Yes. Okay, that's this community. It's unbelievable. And I want you to know that what you do here in New York has ripple effects across the country. Now the O, the first O, second letter, stands for opportunity, and all of us have gotten amazing opportunities through Coro. Okay, I mean, things that you might never get to do the rest of your life. And I, in 1 year, somehow worked in the New York City Department of Ed. I worked on the original Working Families Party campaign. I worked at New York One. I worked for the food entrepreneur who turned out to become the founder of Kind Bars, and now he's a judge on Shark Tank. And then I worked for like a labor union and got to march in the St. Patrick's Day Parade and meet Cardinal O'Connor. And then at some point, my class said, hey, you know, this is all amazing, but we want to learn about federal leadership, so let's go to DC. And this was not in the budget, this was not on the agenda. So we had to like throw parties at bars and raise money and sleep on people's couches, and we show up, and then we pooled our contacts and set up meetings. And next thing you know, I was in the Supreme Court having an interview with Justice Scalia. And then I was sitting in the office with John Lewis, the civil rights leader, talking to him about his life. And then I got to meet Tim Russell. This is all through Coro. These are experiences I will never forget that have stayed with me forever. The R in Coro stands for relationships. We all get that. And these founders had this great insight. They're like, if you're gonna have a multi-sector partnership, that depends on a relationship that you have with someone in a different sector. And that's what, if you get involved with Coro, that's what you lead with. And now, no matter what sector you end up with, you now know someone to call in the nonprofit world, in the business world, the union world, the media world, who can help you, who can inform you, advise you, and hopefully join you. And that's proven true throughout my career. And the last letter was O, which stands for, in my opinion, obligation. So if someone's gonna give you all this and give you a brand new community and introduce you, give you all these opportunities and give you all these relationships, then you have an obligation to do something with that. And I know everyone in this room is giving back to others in big ways. And just a few months ago, last spring I was in DC, and I guess through Phil, the Coro Fellows class of last year, they're having a great time, they're having a great experience, and they decide that they want to go to DC. And it wasn't in the budget, and it wasn't in the agenda. And they called me, and they said, can you help? And I said, of course, you remind me exactly of my class 25 years early. I'll do whatever I can. And I was happy to do it. I was happy to give them my office to be their home base, and I was happy to help set up interviews, and happy to host a dinner with them and alumni. And on the last day, they said, thank you so much, like, how can we repay you? And I said, listen, you don't have to repay me. When I was your age, complete strangers through this organization called Coro invested in me, gave me all these opportunities, relationships, and community, and I'm happy to do it for you. And all I ask is when you become much more influential and impactful and powerful and in all these ways as the years go on, when you get a call from someone connected to Coro asking you for a little time and advice, please feel obligated to say yes. So that's what Coro stands for and means to me. And since we've all learned that leadership through Coro is a team sport, on behalf of all these honorees and on behalf of the class in 1999, I want to say thank you for investing in leaders, thank you for investing in the future of New York, and ultimately the future and success of our country. Thank you.